Welcome back into Foolish Club Media. I am Steven Serda. Rocky, weird Sunday, one, because it's an actual noon kickoff for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I am not used to doing the post-game show this early in the afternoon on Sundays at this point, based on their schedule this season, but also just generally a very weird game for the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. They improved to 10-1 on the season. It's the Panthers, so I think everything is kind of hard to gauge coming out of this contest. But Rocky Magaña, my guy, a 10-1 football team, but the Chiefs barely survive a trip to Carolina with a 30-27 win on the back of, a late game run by Patrick Mahomes sets them up deep in the Panthers territory. They get a field goal to win the game from the kicker that they just signed a couple of weeks ago because Harrison Butker heads to IR. But as I fully expected going into this game, we leave Carolina 10-1, but with absolutely more question marks about this Kansas City Chiefs team moving forward.
I mean, it could be worse. We could be Carolina Panthers fans, right? Getting this close to beating the Chiefs and then not beating the Chiefs, right? And having false hope. But yeah, no, thank God that Brett Veach went out and found the Termistrator to kick the game-winning goal. Trademark Rocky Magaña, the Termistrator. That's his new nickname. I'm calling it right now. Listen, that kid, I think, just like if the Chiefs go on to win the Super Bowl, he just got himself a Super Bowl ring, right? Like for his contribution to the team. So good for him. Those are the positives I'm taking from this game. We could have or at least we're not Carolina Panthers fans, and Spencer Schrader has a cool new nickname in my book. That's what I got, Steven. That's what I got.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think we need to spend 45 minutes on this game. We're not used to noon kickoffs here covering the Kansas City Chiefs anymore, so it'd be kind of nice to get on with my Sunday and maybe enjoy some football and not just have anxiety and be racking my brain as to what's going on with this football team. But at the end of the day, it's a win. A win's a win. You're 10-1. You keep your lead in the AFC. You're still on top of the conference. You're still in play for the number one seed as long as you take care of business down the stretch. But there was lots of red flags from this game that we're going to get into. But also, Rocky, I find myself, trying to poke holes everywhere I can in this Kansas City Chiefs team, because that's what we do when we analyze football teams. We try to find reasons why this team is not going to get where they want to go. And at the end of the day, even against this team, I'm just like, it's hard for me to believe that this thing is crumbling the way that some might want you to believe, because we've seen this from this team over and over again over the last several years. We've seen these kinds of stretches from them. And I think the biggest thing right now, and the biggest question mark for me really, is they've got injuries that they did not have in the past. And is that going to be what's going to keep them from getting where they want to go this season? Because I'm not sure they can overcome that. We've seen this kind of play from them before. So I think everybody called this like, oh, it's the Panthers. You should curb stomp the Panthers. Like, you should totally just destroy them and actually get a blowout win for once. But we've seen this kind of play from this team against inferior competition over and over and over again over the last several years. So nobody is shocked by a close win against the Carolina Panthers. But what I'm sitting here saying is the thing that feels different about this team and about the circumstances they are presently in is the injuries piling up in a way that might not be that they might not be able to overcome them the way that they have in the past, the way that they've overcome their circumstances and played down to their competition. I'm not totally sold that this team at this age, with some of their aging stars, is capable of overcoming the circumstances that they presently have in front of them.
Well, I think here's the difference, like as opposed to years past. is we can sit here and say this team is not playing good football right now, and this team did not play a good football game today, while also saying we still have faith that this team is going to win the Super Bowl, or this team is still a Super Bowl contender, and they're going to find a way to put together in the playoffs. Those things are not mutually exclusive of one another. You can sit here and say the Chiefs played like crap today and say, I also have faith in the Kansas City Chiefs. That's allowed because the Chiefs did play like crap today. And you're right, injuries are piling up. And with the exception of one very specific area, it seems like they have coming to some of those injuries, right? Like you have Charles Omenihu coming back soon to help out the pass rush. You have DJ Humphries that the Chiefs just signed, hopefully to help out at left tackle and kind of solidify a little bit of the stuff along the offensive line where they won't need so much help on the left side. And then maybe it might free some things up, and there might not be such a trickle-down effect of poor blocking, which it wasn't just the tackles today. It wasn't just the tackles last week. It was like you go back and watch the All-22 from last week, and when I go back and watch the All-22 from this week, I'm sure it's going to be the same thing. People were missing tackles at all 5. People were missing blocks at all 5 offensive line positions. And then running backs were missing blocks. Tight ends were missing blocks. Noah Gray had a horrible whiffed block against the Bills. Today, Juju Smith-Schuster had a terrible missed block. Kareem Hunt had a terrible missed block. Joe Thuney had a terrible missed block today. You go across the board, the block on this team right now is atrocious. Not the tackles are the worst in the league right now, but the blocking's not good by anybody. And that's something that hopefully DJ Humphries will fix, right? You have Isaiah Pacheco coming back. Hopefully that helps spark the offense, especially the ground game, spells Kareem Hunt a little bit more, gives him a little bit more explosiveness in the running game. But man, where is the answer in the secondary, Steven? I literally spent half of this game literally looking at other teams' practice squads, trying to see who is out there. Like Kamal Haddon is the best that I'm coming up with right now.
Yeah. I think I mentioned it last week. I was like, if Brett Veach has got like a Charvarius Ward move in his back pocket here, that would be absolutely incredible because yes, the secondary had a rough day, but I'm not going to blame it all on the secondary. The pass rush was absolutely brutal today. And credit to the Carolina Panthers, Dave Canales, who I think is a good offensive-minded head coach. Bryce Young's been playing better. And to their credit, for as bad as the Panthers are on paper, their offensive line has not been awful this season. It's like one of the bright spots of one of the worst rosters in the NFL. But they are still the Panthers. They are still one of the worst teams in all of the NFL. And even though Bryce Young has been playing better, like Bryce Young, there's a case to be made. That was the best NFL start of Bryce Young's career is what we got from him today. And I know a lot of people were pointing out this is like Zach Wilson against the Chiefs last season or a couple years ago, whenever it was. And yes, and that's what I'm pointing to when I say we've seen this from this team in the past. Like this is not something that Kansas City Chiefs fans are unfamiliar with at this point from this team. Like we've seen these kinds of stretches from them in the past, especially this kind of mid-season lull where you're trying to get over the hump and get to that playoff push and you're trying to get your young players, you're developing them, letting them take their lumps and get things figured out so they can be ready down the stretch. And it feels like they're doing some of that with Najee Johnson right now. But this game was particularly concerning because, one, it feels like the Chiefs keep making things harder than they need to, Rocky. And what I mean by that, and I want to get into the defense and the offensive line play and everything that came out of this contest, because none of it was particularly encouraging. I'm still confident in this team because, again, we've seen this kind of performance from them. It's nothing new to anybody who watches each and every single Chiefs game every season. But it just felt like they made things more difficult today than they had to. Going into the game, we know the Carolina Panthers have the absolute worst run defense in all of the NFL. Everybody torches them on the ground, Rocky. What do the Chiefs do? Nah, this is an opportunity for us to see what we got in the passing game. We're going to lean on the passing game all day long. Kareem Hunt winds up with a decent box score, and he has a couple of nice runs here in the second half and a couple of nice moments to wind up with a decent rushing total, 16 carries, 68 yards, 4.3 per carry. But it's like we knew the formula to win this game. You didn't have to you didn't have to make anything more difficult than you needed to, but it feels like the Chiefs do this to themselves. And that's why we get frustrated with them, because it's like they're making things more difficult. And maybe there is something to that, some strategic thing that I will never understand, because Andy Reid's like, yeah, everybody thinks we should just run the ball against the Panthers. Screw that. We're leaning on the pass today. And it was a good opportunity to try to get Mahomes in rhythm and try to work out some kinks within the offense, because they're trying to get Juju involved. They're trying to get Xavier Worthy involved. They're trying to get DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce more involved and try to figure out what they have here moving forward. But it's just like, man, can we just have an easy win? Can we just get this thing out of the way and walk away with a stress-free Sunday where Kareem Hunt has 30 carries and 140 yards, and we don't really have to worry about this anymore? But the Chiefs do it again. And for some reason, they lean on the passing game. And even though Mahomes winds up with a good day in the box score, the offense was absolutely brutal in the fourth quarter of this game, Rocky.
Well, the offense was brutal in the fourth quarter of this game, but the Chiefs just couldn't get out of their own way, though, on offense for half of the game. I mean, how many offensive penalties were there? I mean, they were backing themselves up to 3rd and 15, 3rd and 25. Just penalties all across the board on both sides of the ball. Costly penalties in the secondary, especially. But I mean, just shooting themselves in the foot, killing any rhythm that they have. Like, how are you supposed to run the ball more if you're facing, second and long? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like you're putting yourself in bad situations by playing bad football. And yeah, like, sure, we're not panicking, but that's not an excuse to go out there and not play well. Also, like, you need to go out there and execute on a weekly basis, because the NFL, like this game showed, is that even the bad teams are still good football players. Like they're still professional football players. And if you F around, you're going to find out, right? And the Chiefs almost F around and found out today because they didn't put their best product on the field. I do think that Andy Reid was like, okay, I can, I'm not going to break out anything new on film against these guys. Like what we've already shown is good enough to beat these guys. And if you watch the game, through 75% of the game, the Chiefs were controlling the game, right? Yeah. Like, this should have been a 2 to 3 score victory by Kansas City with the way that they were controlling the football game until the fourth quarter, which they just kind of just like threw it into neutral on both sides of the ball and said, all right, let's make this thing exciting, Yeah. And I mean, the bright spot is Noah Gray has 4 touchdowns in 2 weeks. Yeah. Noah Gray's an emerging touchdown fantasy machine. That's the silver lining.
We can focus in on a positive here, because again, this isn't all doom and gloom. Like, this is a 10-1 football team, and there's a couple of crazy finishes going on around the NFL right now. The Chicago Bears scored with 22 seconds left in the fourth quarter, but the Minnesota Vikings were still up by 3 points, even after a 2-point conversion and a touchdown late by the Chicago Bears. And then they get an onside kick, go kick a field goal, and force overtime with 22 seconds left in the fourth quarter. That game's still in OT. The Commanders and the Cowboys are having an insane fourth quarter where Terry McLaurin rips off a long touchdown to get within a point, and they go for an onside kick. The Cowboys pick it up, run it back for a touchdown. Now they're up by a score. Like, a couple of insane finishes today in the NFL, but it is nice to focus on, like, Noah Gray somehow coming out of all of this, the wide receiver musical chairs that the Kansas City Chiefs are playing. Is Travis Kelce, old and exhausted? Is he just not the same kind of player anymore? And it's like, this is a prime game for him to get heavily involved. The Panthers have been one of the worst tight end defenses in the NFL this season, on top of being the worst run defense in the NFL. And Kelce winds up with a fine day. Like, he was super involved in the first half. They couldn't really get anything going to him in the second half. Mahomes had a couple of looks to him. He finishes with 6 catches for 62 yards. Noah Gray does all of his damage in the first half. He has 4 receptions for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I think as far as the tight ends go, like I still fully believe that Travis Kelce is going to wind up having some huge moments in the postseason. He's going to be exactly like late career Gronk, where when it matters most, he's going to come up and make a big play for you. But at this point, we just shouldn't expect this massive target load and workload for Travis Kelce on any given week, which is why this surge by Noah Gray has been so nice. But it also, I think, is just like, I don't feel like the Chiefs have any easy buttons on offense right now, because Patrick Mahomes in the first half of this game hits 9 different pass catchers. And it's like, again, I think that's game plan, Rocky. I think they said, screw the easy way out. We're not just going to hand the ball off to Kareem Hunt 30 times today, even though we're probably going to get Isaiah Pacheco back next week and have him in the mix again. We're just going to spread the ball around and try to throw it around the field and try to get this passing game working and try to get some answers that way. And maybe Noah Gray is an answer for this offense right now. But to me, it just says that it's something that we've been talking about the last few weeks. Is just like, they don't have any go-to guys right now. They just got a lot of guys that they're spreading the ball around to and hoping that winds up accumulating to enough plays to win when it matters the most. I still think DeAndre Hopkins can make plays for you when you really need him to. I still think Travis Kelce can do that too. But they're still trying to figure out the offense. And that seems abundantly clear in week 12 of the NFL regular season.
Well, there we go. Sorry about that. I think that when Hollywood Brown went down, that they were like, okay, we had a plan for the offense this year for Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown. Then when Hollywood Brown goes down, they're like, okay, we still have the same game plan with Rashee Rice. Like, our game plan is going to be feed Rashee Rice in the seam on quick hitters and let him get yards after the catch, and then hit him on some select shots downfield. But this offense is going to go through Rashee Rice. When he went down, it was like, okay, we're back to plan. We're back to ground zero. We're back to the drawing board here. And listen, 9 receivers, it's nice. I mean, Travis Kelce had 6 receptions for 62 yards today, right? Like, he only had 4 yards. We're talking about what a great day Noah Gray had, because he had 2 touchdowns on it as well, but he only came up with 4 yards less than Noah Gray did. Xavier Worthy had 4 catches for 46 yards. Like, I'm not concerned. Kelsey's going to make those big time plays come the postseason. He's the guy that Patrick Mahomes trusts, and he also trusts DeAndre Hopkins. Like, those would be the 2 guys that he goes to. And then you're going to see your ancillary players like Juju Smith-Schuster get their 1 or 2 targets a game, and maybe they're going to have a big game here or there, whatever. The passing game, the offense in general, as far as the skill position players, I'm not even that concerned with. Like, right? Like, you got like guys you trust that are going to make plays. DeAndre Hopkins, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, in his weird little Mecole Hardman role that he has carved out for the Chiefs right now, is like a punt returner / wildcat quarterback / occasional receiver. Like, honest to God, should they just convert him to running back?
He's been quietly super effective the way that they've been using him in limited capacity.
Yeah, they're using him in very limited capacity. He has a very limited role, but he's been really good in his limited role this year. And so I feel like the Chiefs have the firepower they need. They scored 30 points today, right? Like, win you a football game in any game you score. It's just the secondary, man. I do not trust this secondary in the slightest. I do not like our safeties having to play man coverage.
So I want to get into that and really, I don't want to blame all of it on the secondary today, Rocky. Because I don't think it was all on the secondary. I think where I feel like the secondary has taken so much of the blame over the last few weeks. And by the way, I see a ton of you in the comments, and some of the comments are killing me today. We'll get to some of those here before we get out of here this evening. But I think my concerns for the defense have shifted over the last couple of weeks from, okay, this secondary is a problem. The number 2 cornerback is a legitimate issue. And I'm not discounting that. And I'm not saying it is not an issue, because I think it absolutely is. But what I've seen from this defense the last 2 weeks, I think is far more concerning than just the number 2 cornerback spot. It's this thing is just not operating the way that it had for the last year and a half. And it's not operating even close to that. It's not operating even close to what it was the first 7 weeks of the season before Jalen Watson goes down. And now Jalen Watson's a great player. Tremendous value for the Kansas City Chiefs, a 7th round player who looked like he was a legitimate starting player for your defense. You were getting great play from him prior to his injury. But Jalen Watson's not the type of difference maker that should make this thing totally fall apart the way that I think that it has the last couple of weeks. And I think part of it is on Steve Spagnuolo, where the pass rush is not winning right now, Rocky. It is not winning enough. It is not doing enough to help the secondary, and your safeties look kind of slow. Can we get Jaden Hicks more involved? Because Justin Reed, I keep seeing him getting burned. I keep seeing Brian Cook getting burned. Chamari Connor, for his moments of impact and the moments that look great for him, he also has 5 or 6 other plays a game where he is totally out of position, where he looks like he is lost in coverage. And so, yes, the secondary is an issue right now, but they have to win their matchups up front. And Chris Jones is the only guy up front right now that is consistently winning. But Chris Jones at this age, I don't know if it's just he's worn out. It's a long NFL regular season. He's played so many snaps with these postseason runs and Super Bowls and all of that over the last few years. Their pass rush simply isn't good enough right now. Joshua Uche has given them absolutely nothing since they traded for him. They desperately need Charles Omenihu to come back and look like he did last season, which that might be a long shot at this point coming off of an ACL tear. But the pass rush has to win to give the secondary some support, because right now they don't have the players in the secondary to hold up in coverage the way that they did before for Steve Spagnuolo to continuously blitz the way that he likes to. And Bryce Young absolutely cooked them today, Rocky. Every time they blitzed and sent pressure that way, Bryce Young was picking them apart today. And this is Bryce Young. Like, we're not talking about a team that they're going to go see in the playoffs. This is Bryce Young. Like, this is something I get that there's so many moving parts and so many injuries across the board for this team this season. So it does feel like there's some workshopping going on right now where they're trying to figure out what they can do and what they can't. But it also feels like Steve Spagnuolo's got to make some more adjustments, because teams are figuring it out and teams are saying, we know they can't win up front with just their front four. So they're going to send pressure. And so we're going to deploy looks specifically to target that kind of pressure and those kinds of blitzes. And over the last 2 weeks, the Chiefs have been losing that matchup on a weekly basis. So Steve Spagnuolo's got to make some adjustments here, and he's got to figure out this personnel grouping.
That's the one thing with Steve Spagnuolo. He doesn't make adjustments to his play calling style. Like, he's going to call his plays. He's going to run his defense. And right now he does not have the horses to play his defense. You're right. The front four is just not getting home. We got nothing out of Josh Uche. Felix Anudike-Uzomah has been a ghost since the moment he was drafted. And he's not, even early on, he was sometimes playing good run defense. Today, he was even out of position in the run game. You know, like Mike Dana had some flashes here and there, but Mike Dana is never going to be your superstar. And George Karlaftis isn't producing at the same level that we thought he was going to, or what he did, or even that he did earlier in the season. Guys just are not getting home. And then that's compounded by the fact that when you do blitz, those guys aren't getting home. Like, the teams are ready for it. The teams are leaving extra guys back. They're picking up the blitzes. You're not disguising the blitzes as well as you did early in the season either, I don't think. And the blitzes are getting picked up. So your front four is not getting home. Your blitzes aren't getting home. And you're shorthanded in the secondary. Like, you're really kind of failing at all 3 levels here currently on the defense. And we're talking about Bryce Young, who had 117 yards average a game coming into this game. Like, I feel like I'm about to go like Allen Iverson practice. We talking about practice here with Bryce Young. Like, Bryce Young. We talking about Bryce Young, y'all. Not Montana, not Elway, Bryce Young. You know, and like, I'm sorry, but at some point, yeah, the Chiefs will figure it out. Yeah, the Chiefs are going to be great. And I still believe in them as a team, but why is it that these crappy quarterbacks always have career days against our defense? Like, why does Zach Wilson have to have the best game of his career against us? Like, why is it that whenever a guy comes in off the bench, he's going to drive him down and bring him to within. Like, are you kidding me? Bo Nix was garbage until he played the Chiefs. And then all of a sudden, Bo Nix gets on tracks and he's been on a heater ever since he played our defense. Like, come on, man. Like, at some point, why is the Chiefs defense the get right game? Like, that's what it feels like right now, is that we're the other, like, they were supposed to be our get right game. We were their get right game on offense. And that's concerning.
So I'm not willing to like totally concede the way I feel like some have. I know Ron mentioned it this week. And by the way, thank you guys for sticking with us through all of our issues with Apple Podcasts this week. We are back and working properly. And so if you missed anything, we would really appreciate if you went back and checked it out. Because we had a rough week here, but we are caught up now and we are back in business and fully functioning. So I really appreciate everybody who reached out and asked about the feed. Trust me, I was very stressed about it all week, getting that thing figured out and getting it working again. But it's fully functional now. Hopefully we have absolutely no issues moving forward. But Rocky, I'm just not ready to totally concede either that like this is, trial and error. This is the Chiefs practicing things and learning what they can do. Because I do think there is truth to that. Like there is absolutely truth to that. And we have seen them execute that with tons of success in the postseason where, yeah, we showed you this in the first matchup and we're going to show you this look, but it's going to be something totally different and it's going to confuse you and we're going to burn you for it in a playoff game. Like, yes, there's long cons at play here for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I do think they absolutely play down to competition because we have seen them do that year after year after year under Andy Reid. That goes back to even the Alex Smith days. That's not something that just started happening with Patrick Mahomes. Like this is something that has happened with Andy Reid year after year. This is something that we have seen from this defense year after year, except for last season when they were just the best defense that we've seen in Chiefs history. And so when you're suffering all the injuries that this team has, when you've accumulated all of these and not just, depth pieces, we're talking about star players. We're talking about guys that are focal points of your team. You have to workshop some of this stuff as you go and you have to figure it out. And so there's going to be growing pains and all of that. But like I mentioned, it's just like, can we just take the easy way out sometimes? Because it's like, if the Chiefs just run the ball today, this probably isn't as stressful of a matchup. But instead, they're trying to throw it all over the field against a team that's actually been decent against the pass. And they were able to pick this team apart. But again, you're simply a much more talented team than the Carolina Panthers. So I'm not going to walk away from this thing thinking that like, oh, the Chiefs passing game is all of a sudden fixed and they've got some answers coming out of this thing. It did feel like the offense was workshopping things, and same goes for the defense. But it would just be nice for them to just be like, let's just get some easy wins. Cause I know we're making it hard on the guys and we're making it hard on our young players that we're trying to develop and get more out of. And maybe that is just, you got to take your lumps because that's how we think that you learn the most. But every now and then it would just be nice to get an easy win for the defense. It would be nice for them to just, drop back and play zone coverage and try to win up front and see what they can do and see if those guys can make plays in the secondary instead of sending the house and asking your guys to play man-on-man coverage and win when you're shorthanded at personnel on the back end. Like, I just want to see them do some things that like would just be nice, stress-free wins for this team because it feels like they need that sometimes. It feels like these close games, these one-score games, living life close to the edge like that all the time. It just seems like it's so hard and so stressful on the players, let alone the fans.
I agree 100%. And I would, honest to God, I feel like I would like to see a little bit less man coverage out of this defense. I feel like, especially with us playing a lot of 4 safety looks, I would like to see us play a little bit more zone coverage, which I think you saw when it was that 3rd and 7 play where the Chiefs pass rush actually got home, flushed Bryce Young out, and then the secondary was all over everybody. Like, I think dropping guys back like that at times is better than getting home against the quarterback. I mean, yeah, you're when you blitz, you're cutting down the amount of time that it takes for the defensive back has to cover, but you're also ratcheting up the intensity and the pressure of the situation too. And so I don't know, man. It's one of those things where, like, yeah, okay, we won the game. Like, why am I so pissy? We won the game.
Yeah.
It's noon. It was a noon game. My kids are still awake. Like, I'm gonna go out here after I get off this podcast and go and play with my kids and have dinner with my beautiful family. And the Chiefs are going to be 10-1, and we're going to be looking forward to Raider Week, and everything's going to be great. But man, they just did not look good today.
And I want to make it clear too, because I know some takeaways from this will be like, oh, even in a win, just like negative Nancy's over here, like crushing the Chiefs, even though they came away with the win and they're a 10-1 football team. I still think the Chiefs are the best team in football. Like, I still think they are that good, and they're only getting healthier. Like, it's all reports lately have been very encouraging for Hollywood Brown coming back at some point here in the near future. Isaiah Pacheco is practicing and fully expected to be back here within the next couple of weeks. Charles Omenihu, same can be said about him. He's going to factor into the mix. So they're getting healthy at the positions that they can still get healthy at. And hopefully those guys will come back and have an impact. Like, it seems more and more likely that Jalen Watson is not returning this season. So it seems like we can, if anybody still had their hopes up that he was going to be able to do that, all reports say that that's not going to happen. Rashee Rice is not going to be back. And so, and they signed DJ Humphrey. So maybe the tackle situation is going to be improved here in the near future. At least we'll feel better about it. But it just wasn't a fun football game. Like, it just didn't make you feel great. But again, then I can talk myself into the experience of this kind of performance is like why you win when it matters the most. That's why you win the close games in the postseason. That's why you always seem to come up with it when you need it the most. And this team has continued to do that, which is why I still have faith that they're the best team in football, though the Detroit Lions are really pressing me and making me feel like they got a strong case for it right now, because they have been tremendous this season. But I still think the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL. It's just right now, it's just against that team in particular. It's like hard to feel good about that when Bryce Young is out here picking you apart on the defensive side of the ball.
100%. And here's the thing, like to your point, if you go to the movie theater and you see a film made by Martin Scorsese, you're going to be a lot more critical of the quality of that film than if you're sitting at home watching a Lifetime, or Hallmark movie channel Christmas movie, right? You're going to watch like a Hallmark movie channel Christmas movie that's like, like what, like a 36% on Rotten Tomatoes. And you're like, hey, that wasn't too bad. But if you go and watch a Martin Scorsese film that's a 39 on Rotten Tomatoes, you're like, that movie sucked. Like, come on, Scorsese, up your game. We expect more out of you. That's the difference. The Carolina Panthers are a Hallmark Christmas movie. The Kansas City Chiefs are a film by Martin Scorsese. So yes, we are more critical of them because they're better, and better things should be critiqued at a higher level than things that suck. And I'm sorry, the Panthers suck. They were 30th in pass rush win rate coming into today. And the Chiefs made them look like they had Tamba Hali and Jared Allen on the defensive line coming after Patrick Mahomes, And so, and I see Elliot, dude, I see you in the comments, and you're absolutely right. Panthers fans are probably all out having drinks right now, being like, dude, we were so close to beating the Super Bowl champions. Like maybe we're turning things around. We had 2 straight wins, and then what? We take the Super Bowl champs down to the wire. They're probably on cloud 9 right now, just buzzing, and we're over here a bunch of grumpy Gusses. I get it, but that's also because we have the better football team, so our team should be held to a higher standard. And that's not being a negative Nancy. That's literally just judging things based upon their quality of a product. Oh, you're muted, Steve. Man, this is mute city today.
Yeah, I want to mention 2 more things before we get the comments and get out of here, because we've already spent enough time on the Carolina Panthers. But last thing I'm going to say on the secondary, and I know they're workshopping things on the defensive side of the ball. I know they're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. And I know for whatever reason, they have decided Najee Johnson is the guy that they are going to go with. It is not Joshua Williams. They want to get Johnson as much experience right now as they can because they're going to have to lean on him in the playoffs. And that is the answer. It doesn't feel like there's any other answer the Chiefs are exploring right now as far as their number 2 cornerback goes. But what's concerning today about today's performance, Rocky, is that this is not a talented Panthers wide receiver group. Like, we're talking David Moore was lighting you up today. Xavier Legette had multiple big plays. Adam Thielen was giving you problems. And it wasn't just, and it wasn't just Najee Johnson and Chamari Connor. Trent McDuffie didn't have a good day today, Rocky. Trent McDuffie gets flagged on the 2-point conversion attempt that leads to an easy 2-point tie for them. And then Patrick Mahomes has to do what Patrick Mahomes does and lead you to victory. But Trent McDuffie also gives up a touchdown. Like, I just think it points to a bigger problem right now, which it's not just the personnel of this defense. It's your stars are struggling. Your stars are having issues. Trent McDuffie started the season, and for the first 7-8 weeks of the year, hey, that is a bona fide, unanimous all-pro corner. Looks like he has got a case to be the best corner in all of football this season. And then it's kind of struggled since Jalen Watson went down. And maybe it's because you're asking Trent McDuffie to do too much. You're moving him inside. You're moving him outside. You're still asking him to be this super effective blitzer because that's such a key component of his game. It just feels like they're asking McDuffie to do too much right now. And it is making his play fall off in other areas. Or Chamari Connor has his flashes, but Chamari Connor's just simply not very good in coverage. Like, Chamari Connor looks like a safety who wants to go lay hits. He does not look like a guy who is going to be able to keep up with shifty route runners and things like that. And Najee Johnson is just simply not like a significant starting NFL cornerback. Like, he is a depth player. He is a rotational player at best. And then you're also just not getting enough out of the safety room. Like, Justin Reed is getting burned too often. Brian Cook is getting burned too often. That's why I want to see more Jaden Hicks, because it seems like every time we see Jaden Hicks, he's making a play. Like, I don't understand why Joshua Williams can't get involved more. And I don't understand why Jaden Hicks can't get involved more. Like, if we're experimenting right now, if we're trying things out and trying to figure out a way to make this secondary just work and fit together enough, like, why aren't we experimenting with more of that? Why are we just putting week after week these guys back out there and letting them take their lumps and get beat until we finally are like, okay, well, I guess they're just not good enough?
Oh, 100%. And Najee Johnson, to that point, Steve Spagnuolo has wanted Najee Johnson to be a starting cornerback on this team since they drafted him. And if you watch Najee Johnson's college tape at Marshall, he looked a lot like L'Jarius Sneed. Like, he looks like at Marshall, he looked like a Steve Spagnuolo prototypical cornerback that you would want, except for he was a safety. But so was L'Jarius Sneed, right? Like, that whole converted safety to cornerback thing. Steve Spagnuolo loves it. The problem is, unlike L'Jarius Sneed, who was able to up his game to an NFL level, Najee Johnson is coming off of 2 major knee injuries, and he looks like a guy who should have been playing at Marshall and not in the Big Ten, right? Like, he was a 7th round draft pick for a reason, right? We're not talking about this like Trent McDuffie should be playing well because he was a 1st round draft pick. Najee Johnson is playing like you would expect a 7th round draft pick to play. And so I hate that I'm like dogging on him because he's playing to the level of football of his draft position, right? Like, he's playing like a 7th round draft pick. The problem is that the Chiefs are trying to lean on a 7th round draft pick that's had 2 knee injuries as a starting outside cornerback. And you're right. Jaden Hicks, I think he does need to get in the game more. And Joshua Williams, for all his problems, I mean, I think that's the issue, is that they don't trust Joshua Williams, but they can't trust Najee Johnson. So Chris Roland Wallace, is that the problem? They're out of answers, and they still got a lot of questions at that outside cornerback position. And I just don't think they have an answer for it at this point. I think that's the one place on the roster that Brett Veach is like, I don't know how to help you, bro. And to his discredit, I think Steve Spagnuolo is like, I'm good with Najee Johnson. Yeah. I like Najee. I could win with Najee Johnson. You're winning, but you're not looking good with Najee Johnson.
Yeah. It's there's still a lot to figure out. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on too is like it just feels like, and this is where I get skewed by the metrics and the ratings and all of this stuff, because the Chiefs offensive line continues to have issues week after week. But if you look at a lot of the ratings, it says they're doing fine. And it's like, no, some of it's on Patrick Mahomes. It's not on the offensive line, or some of it is, some of it is just certain instances and you're not paying attention to every single snap and things like that. And it's like, well, I know for a fact that the Carolina Panthers have one of the worst pass rushes in all of the NFL. And coming into today, I saw this, I think it was from Mina Kimes. The Panthers defense had 12 sacks on the season, and they sacked Patrick Mahomes 5 times today, Rocky. And it wasn't all Wanye Morris today. Jawan Taylor did not have a good day, but they started out looking pretty good, Rocky. Like early in the game, Patrick Mahomes had all day to throw. Like Patrick Mahomes was dropping back, and it was like, man, when you give him some time, he's surveying the field and he's letting it rip, and they're picking up first downs and chunk plays, and it's all looking easy for the first time in a while. But then in the second half, the offensive line was just getting their asses kicked, and Mahomes was under pressure the entire second half. Like, it's just simply not good enough. And maybe DJ Humphries is the answer, but he's still working his way back, and it's probably going to be a while before we even see him on the field. And, he might not have been signed as like, hey, he's going to be our starting guy when he is fully in football shape and ready to go. He might just be a depth piece because they obviously don't trust Kingsley, who was active today after being a healthy and active last week. But it's clear that they know Kingsley's not an answer this season. He's still a developmental player. Maybe we get more from him down the stretch. But they brought in DJ Humphries because they knew they needed more depth along the offensive line. I still think Wanye's probably going to be the starter, but they have to get better play out of the offensive line, because if you're giving up 5 sacks against the Carolina Panthers, I just don't know what you're going to do against a real playoff team once we get into the postseason in January.
I tell you, I for my Airhead Pride newsletter piece, I went back and I watched the All-22, and I watched every single offensive snap against the Bills. I would say at least 70% of the snaps, somebody just missed their block and got beat. And it was Wanya and Jawan Taylor looked horrible. They looked non-playable almost against the Bills when you go back and watch the tape. But it wasn't just them. It was everybody. Like everybody in the offensive line was missing blocks. Creed Humphrey missed blocks. I mean, Joe Tooney missed, like everybody missed blocks. And then also they left people back to help. They're missing the blocks. Like you saw Juju Smith-Schuster try to chip inside and then realize, holy crap, he's blitzing from the outside today. And then he tried to like make up for it by becoming a hot route and going out in the flat real quick and scream at him. But he basically just had his hands on his head. Like I totally screwed that entire play up, and he did. And so it's blocking is the number one problem on this offense. Like if they could get their blocking figured out, this offense would be perfectly fine. I would have zero concerns about this offense being a Super Bowl caliber offense if they could just keep Patrick Mahomes upright and just not give people like free runners at him, because that's what it is. It's not even that they're just like missing their blocks. They're either holding or they're just whiffing, and guys are getting free run at Mahomes, and he's just like immediately under pressure. And so it's ugly.
It's when Mahomes had time today, he was exceptional. Like it was the first half, it was as good as as good and as sharp and clean as we've seen Mahomes in a while now, Rocky.
Well, and when you look at Buffalo last week, so I looked at it, Mahomes played actually a really good game considering what he was given. Like there was probably 2 or 3 plays where like, okay, Mahomes probably wants that one back. Other than that, based upon the coverage and based upon the pressure, he made the right decision. It was just the blocking was that bad that it made him look that bad.
Again, because I'm sure someone will take our post-game comments the wrong way. We still are fully confident in this Kansas City Chiefs team. We still believe they are one of the absolute best teams in all of the NFL. And they improved to 10-1 with a 30-27 win over the Panthers. They've got a short week. We got a Black Friday game against the Las Vegas Raiders coming up this week. So we'll have everything you need to know right here at Foolish Club Media. So please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. head over to our YouTube page and follow us. We'll get to a couple of comments before we get out of here because we still wound up talking about the Carolina Panthers for 45 minutes, Rocky. But from our friend BS Jones, I'm sitting on the Oregon coast. I was about to just go walk into the ocean with this game. Yeah, I mean, it got hairy there for a minute. There was a second there where it really seemed like the Chiefs were going to drop a game to the Carolina Panthers. Thankfully, the Panthers go tie the game and they leave enough time on the clock that once there was, a minute plus on the clock and the Chiefs get the ball back, it's like, well, obviously Mahomes is going to take them down and they're going to win this football game. Like, I never truly believed the Panthers were going to upset them, but it certainly did get worrisome there for about 5 minutes of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, like, no, you always thought, because with the Chiefs being up by 8 points, you're always like, okay, worst case scenario, Mahomes is going to get the ball and the Chiefs are going to go down, and this isn't going to go to overtime. They're going to win the game, and we're going to be pissed off because it was so close. And that's exactly what happened. But just to harp on it, the Chiefs are Martin Scorsese. This game was bringing out the dead. This was the Chiefs bringing out the dead game. I just want more Goodfellas in The Departed and less bringing out the dead with Nicolas Cage. That's all I'm asking.
I personally, I like Bringing Out the Dead. I thought it was a very good Martin Scorsese movie, but I understand where you're coming from. It's certainly not the typical Scorsese that we're all used to. From one of our favorites, Elliot, and that's not even the Elliot comment that I meant to pick, but this is the one that I wanted to pick from Elliot. The Andy Holding plays back excuse can't be an excuse every week, though. At some point, they just got to execute and not need exotic looks to produce, which I totally agree with. Like, I really do think there's something to the Chiefs holding things back and something to this chess match of NFL play callers and why Andy Reid is so exceptional at what he does. But I don't think it's like we're doing this now because we know it's going to be successful if we see them again in the playoffs. I think a lot of it is just trial and error. And again, instead of taking the easy way out and saying, we're just going to run the ball 40 times today because we know we can absolutely beat the Panthers that way. And that's what most teams would do. The Chiefs are like, no, we want to make it hard. Like we want to make it hard on ourselves to see what we can do by forcing things that we know we aren't good at.
100%. I think that's how the Chiefs do get better. But at some point, to Elliot's comment, like, you just got to be able to line up across the guy across from you and win your assignment and win your matchup and just play better football than the other team, right? You just got to be able to go out there and an 11 on 11 basis, just be better and beat the guys across from you and not have it come down to the wire every single time.
Yes. Let's just, for the love of God, can we just get a blowout win? And now we've got another weird holiday game, Black Friday game coming up. And I'm not super confident in that after what we got on Christmas Day last year. They also got a Christmas Day game again this season. So we'll see. We're not on red alert yet for the Kansas City Chiefs. They're still 10-1. They're still atop the conference. They're still in the driver's seat for the number 1 overall seed. And I still absolutely believe that they can get there. But there's lots of concerning things that they have to address and they have to fix here moving forward. So we'll have everything you need to know this week on Foolish Club Media. So again, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Head over to our YouTube page. Check us out there. We're nearing 500 subscribers there, so we really appreciate. Tell your family at the Thanksgiving table if that's what it takes. We'll talk to you guys this week. Rocky will be back with the latest episode of each season. We'll have a Brian's World. We'll have Show and BK. Still everything you know and love from the channel, even on a holiday week. And then we should be back again on Black Friday to cover the Chiefs matchup with the Las Vegas Raiders. We'll talk to you guys then.